Bang, you're on. Hi, Michael Miller here with Miami's Community News. Our guest today is David Winker, attorney and civic activist. David, thank you for being here.
So happy to be here. Great to see you. You look great.
What can I tell you? The wife said if I didn't lose the weight, she was going to dump my rear end and stop making dinner. And
Good motivation.
And some other things too. So you were involved in a lot of civic activities. You're involved in the Coconut Grove Playhouse, Calusa out yonder, the Wawa in Coral Gables, and lots of other things that I'm acutely unaware of. And all very sort of productive. And you made your point to the county commission or to the city commission. Recently, you saw the people speak up about Miami Wilds off 152nd Street and by the zoo. And the county commission said, okay, to the people, we're out. But there is a contract on that, so that should be interesting. And the county apparently was owed a year's worth of rent. I'm thinking, what kind of company extends a 12, right? A month?
Right, exactly.
12 months worth of rent and not collected. So it should be interesting to see how that thing rolls out. So tell us some of the things you've been working on.
Yeah, so I got to tell you, it's interesting. These things come, like there's these tipping points that we talk about in the law when things change up. And it's been interesting because we've really seen, with the arrests at City of Miami, with arresting the commissioner, Alex Diaz de la Portilla, and the case against Joe Carollo resulting in the $63 million judgment. You see the kind of fighting back, the hard work that residents are doing, paying off and trying to really redirect government to be more responsive to people's needs. And I think that I see so much of this through that lens of really residents just taking back their power. I mean, they have that power, right? And, one of the problems, to quote Al Crespo, the old political blogger, it's like we get the government we deserve and we deserve the government we get, because we can vote the bums out. That's one of the problems I have.
We're not talking about the Coral Gables City Commission.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll
get to that. But the idea is that, exactly. Well, that's a perfect, not to skip over it, but, the mayor of Coral Gables, who many people do feel is out of touch with the residents right now, was elected unopposed. So it kind of puts you in a rough position, especially if you are legally trying to attack something, because judges tend to look at, we're taught in law school to really focus on the government as a system, right? It's a system. It's like this brilliant system that we have with checks and balances, and we really don't want judges making political decisions. And it's the people, and it's who they elect, and then when the elected officials make decisions we don't like, us lawyers are very quick to run to court, and then the judges are just like, whoa. Like, why? I don't want to make this decision. I'm not in a position. I didn't hear all these arguments. That politician made that decision, and you guys are upset, but you voted for him. Yeah. And so I think that really that accountability, there's so many parts to it, but one of the parts is residents educating themselves, residents fighting through. We're all raising kids, making a living, and we don't have time to go to City Hall. The meetings are scheduled, as they're 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Like it's hard for regular people to show up. And I think that like the Wawa case was a good example of that, where residents did show up and frankly didn't like how they were treated. Right? They saw how they were talked to. They were told by the mayor and the commissioners, you're racist, your complaints don't have merit, and that kind of got them riled up. Like, that's not fair. That's not why we're here, and let's fight back. It actually empowered them to say, like, no, we need to take control of our own story and be part of this and fight back. And obviously we were able to eventually have a judge look at what Coral Gables did and said, they didn't like it. So there's a lot of aspects to this. And I got to tell you something. I've got to throw something out to the Miami Herald, right? The hard work that the Herald reporters are doing in the city of Miami, in the city of Coral Gables, in the county, to expose some of the stuff. Like, we have almost like kind of a backhanded compliment, because I think there was a perception for a while that the Herald was like a zombie newspaper, right? And now all of a sudden we're getting great articles.
Think about what the fine work they did with the Jeffrey Epstein, the predator. They brought it back up, and then it was disclosed what a sweetheart deal it was. And it exposed him, and the victims of that were financially compensated. You can't take away their pain, but they were compensated. And then ultimately he died from whatever. But the point was that the Herald was able to bring it up. and to the surface where people can look at it. Let's talk about Coral Gables for a second. Coral Gables wants to annex a couple different areas, including High Pines. The city, in its infinite wisdom, sent cards out to people that lived in High Pines, maybe some other areas, and it was a checkbox. Yes, I want to annex. It was already checked yes. There was no no on it. There were no comment sections on it. That's a real push-pull, and it's really terrible because they could have found out a couple of things. One, what percentage of the people responded to that? So now they only know the ones that are yes. That doesn't mean the other ones were no. It just means that was what they did. It was like that insurance card you get as an insert. It's already checked off. All you have to do is peel it off and drop it in the mail. Really bad. All right.
And let's talk about that, because I think that sometimes it's like, is it evil intent? Is it arrogance? You know, like it's like there's really no positive way to look at that type of behavior, right? Like, do you want our feedback or not? Clearly you don't. You know, right. Clearly you're telling us. And that's one of the things that my brother and I in the newspaper likes to do is let it be transparent. Whatever it is, fine. You agree with it, fine. You don't, it's okay. In this case, the people in High Pines got gypped. And it's clear that the city wants to do that, or they would have cared what the people did. And what they say. And at the same time, the city didn't inquire as far as the residents that are currently in there. What do you think? No, and I want to address that, because I think that it's very interesting that there's this aspect of when this happens. Like, I'm in court, and when you have a jury trial, the jury comes in. You know, probably a majority of those people have never been in a courtroom in their life, and the judge bends over backwards to explain the process, thank the jurors, and we're very grateful that, like, that's what keeps our system of justice going, is having those jurors come in and willingly do this hard work and leave work, leave children, leave spouses, and do the work and sit there and listen to us and decide cases. But, you know, I see the judges seen as an opportunity. It's almost like a civic lesson. Like, this is why it's important. We appreciate you being here. And they bend over backwards to explain everything. And I find it so much in city, it's like a lost opportunity. It's like High Pines residents. What's been their interaction with the city of Coral Gables government? Most zero. And their first interaction is a freaking postcard that's pre-marked. Like, you know, like
I know.
It's really a bad introduction to a relationship.
So, and I'm delighted when the judges do that, because it may only be 10 or 15 people at a time, but multiply it out for all the judges and all the people that go, oh, the judge explained it. We've never, as you point out, never been there. So tell us what some of the cases you might be working on without identifying them per se.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm involved in one of the things that we're seeing all over town is this partition issue. As we need more property, anyone who has a lot over 21,000 square foot, because you need 10,000 square foot lots. There's incredible pressure to subdivide those lots. And so I'm seeing a lot of that, and I'm doing a lot of that work. And right now I'm in a neighborhood called Biltmore Heights. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a beautiful neighborhood off of kind of Blue.
And this is different than the accessory dwelling units?
Yes, this is different. So this is the idea of actually taking a home. So, you know, an old style, you know, Miami estate, right, on 40,000 acres, or 40,000 square feet, or a place on a couple acres. We have places that are on 5 acres, 3 acres, and basically subdividing that into the 5 lots, or, you know, even more depending on what on the setup of the zoning. And the neighbors, of course, hate it, right? They don't like seeing the old houses torn down. And they don't like that it inevitably results in homes that are closer to them, smaller setbacks, and just more density and more activity on the street, et cetera, countered with, we need more housing, clearly, right? We do have to have more housing. And so it's a real tension. And so in Biltmore Heights right now, there is a lot that's about 5 acres. And they want to put, they're by right allowed to put 6 homes, I believe. And they want to put 12 homes. So the neighbors come together, they're fighting it. And we just had our first local area planning meeting.
And so the city of Miami?
No, this is Dade. This is unincorporated Dade, right. Which gets to our unincorporated Dade part, which is, I got to tell you something. The people who live in unincorporated Dade love living in unincorporated Dade, because a lot of academics look at all of these municipalities that we have down here as just unnecessary layers of tax, corruption, and basically reaching into your wallet, right? You can be an unincorporated Dade and your services may not, I think it's debatable whether their services are actually inferior, but you're not maybe getting, that's how it's sold to people is like, well, you're going to get faster rescue times, faster police, presence. But overall, people who live in unincorporated Dade like living there. And it's becoming a smaller piece. Basically, there's a policy that if a piece of unincorporated Dade is surrounded by municipalities, it should be. This county actually would like to offload it. But in that case, we won the initial hearing. They've appealed it. We're going to now go to the county commission, which sits as the planning board. And again, the neighbors are fighting. Just this infilling of neighborhoods. And what that looks like, and then and I think it's really important is like what say do they have as far as how that looks, what happens to through streets, what happens to traffic flow, and issues like that. So that's an issue that's going on there. Another thing that I've been working on is I'm doing an increasing amount of foreclosure work, and if foreclosures are up, and we still have kind of these old robo-signed documents and people are
that's a 10-year event, isn't it?
It's still out there in these documents and they're still flushing through the system, these kind of like provably false documents. And so it's been very interesting, to try to, you'll be sitting at home and something happens within the family, the rental payment, the mortgage payments aren't made, and there's a foreclosure event. And then we look at the underlying documents, and basically you'll get contacted by a bank that you've never heard of, right? Your loan's been sold 5 times allegedly. This bank is now foreclosing. And so there's been opportunities to fight that. We've had some very good results of really trying to fight it on the normal grounds. Does this bank have standing to do this? Are these legitimate? Is this a legitimate foreclosure? And then turning that into a negotiated settlement to try to find a path forward for people to keep their homes. And so unfortunately, I think we're going to continue to see that. There was kind of a lull post-pandemic where people weren't making mortgage payments, and the people that are still struggling, the banks are kind of getting around to pushing that through. So I think we're seeing a lot more of the foreclosure. So if anyone has a foreclosure or is heading toward foreclosure, I always tell people with these debt cases, it's embarrassing. People don't want to deal with the problem. And it's like the exact opposite approach. Like you need to be proactive. You need to work it out. Because I've always told people the banks want one thing. They want performing loans. They actually don't want your house. Very rare cases. They don't want your house.
Because a house is not performing counts against them.
Exactly. It doesn't make accounting sense. And then also you see what happens. I don't know if in your neighborhood you've had foreclosures, but they sit for years. But the bank just doesn't, they're not equipped to resell it and deal with it.
So there's somebody I know that he hadn't paid taxes, insurance, or his mortgage in 8 years, 9 years. And he actually was able to go get a mortgage and made a deal with the mortgage company to pay a whole lot less than all that accumulated interest that was on there.
Yeah, no, and that's what we're doing a lot of, and we're seeing a lot of is and listen, sometimes you have to fight the bank to get to that point, to get them to come to the table. So it takes some time and some effort and some money to fight it, and then you can get an offer. We call it usually it'll be just a restatement of the loan, right? They'll actually say, okay, this is what we agree on. We'll drop all the penalty interest and all the BS. We want our principal, and we want usually the bank is paying the property taxes and insurance. And so they lump that together in a package that actually makes sense where someone can keep their home versus just doing nothing and you're going to lose your home. So one of the things that we found is a lot of people are surprised that they've gone 9 years without paying, they've gone whatever, and that we're able to kind of work with that and keep them in their home, because most of these houses, because of the way our property values have gone, you very rarely run into an actually upside down loan. Like there is enough equity to do it, which is good for purposes of modifications and restatements, and it's bad because the bank can take the home and resell it and make money.
So we're going to see more of that as the interest rates stay higher. than they were before, and it's persistent.
Yep.
And, after 3 months, 6 months, a year, the homeowner that used to be paying 4 points or 5 is now paying 7 or 8,
Yep.
right? I go, gee, that's another 500 a month or another 1,000, sort of gets cumulative. So do you know onto another subject, are you familiar with what's happening with the Coconut Grove Playhouse? What's the latest?
Yes. So the latest on the Coconut Grove Playhouse is we were successful in overturning the city's administrative decision to demolish. The city of Miami. The city of Miami issued a demolition permit. We appealed it as of right. When I say that term, it's just like there's an appellate process. We availed ourselves of the appellate process, and we won at the PZAB. The county has now appealed that decision to, which is, we always call it the appellate division of the 11th Circuit. So it's not the third DCA, but it's circuit court judges sitting in an appellate capacity. And so that case has been fully briefed. We should have a decision in maybe the next 3 to 6 months, and then that process will continue. But we're basically fighting that. And
that was the demolition order that you're fighting.
The demolition permit. That would have allowed them to demolish it. So it's a significant victory because once it's gone, it's gone. And so we were very happy with that result, and that will continue to go out. And really that comes down to, I think in many respects, is who is the next commissioner for the Grove. And I can't remember what district that is. I mean, maybe it's 7, but right now it's Raquel Regalado. And, Raquel ran on saving the Playhouse. When she got into office, she changed her position and is now, pushing kind of the county plan. And, whoever runs against her, likely Cindy Lerner is going to run again. I think Steve Rosenberg may rise again. Those guys are all very vehement protectors of the Playhouse. So there may be, there really is an effort to get to the next election. And again, it goes to let people decide, right?
Yes.
But in that case, I think Raquel led people to believe, or she did lead people to believe, that she was going to be saving the Playhouse. So they voted in accordance with that. And then, she changed her position, so it's not quite fair to blame residents. But this time around, obviously, they're going to know where everyone stands. And it can be a little bit of a referendum on the Playhouse, because I think the mayor is really looking to the district commissioner to lead that project. So if someone else is elected, the Playhouse could really move in a different direction. So I'm actually optimistic about the Playhouse at this point.
Yeah, let's talk about Calusa, the old Calusa Golf Course. 166 acres. Right up Kendall Drive, 132nd Street area. It was purchased a while back, and it was called the Ring. The homes around it were in a homeowners association, and their documents upon when the golf course was built was that they had to leave the golf course there. Over a period of time, the people gave up their right to fight that. They got a permit. The developer got a permit to start doing work on it. One of the neighbors, who you'll identify in a minute, started recognizing that perhaps there were some state protected birds on the property, and in fact there were, which was a big surprise, I'm sure, to the developer. What's the latest with that?
Yeah, so we won at the third DCA. We appealed the county's approval of that, and that was appealed by the developer and the county to the Florida Supreme Court. So we are in the beginning stages of that briefing where they're asking the court to take jurisdiction to allow them to appeal the third DCA's decision. And so, we're a long way off on that, but the fight still continues. We feel confident that we'll prevail in the end, but, it's still in the courts. But basically the way it stands right now, the birds are protected. The land is still there. The rookery is still there. And we're very, very happy and grateful for that.
Some 30 years ago, there was some property on Sunset Drive and just east of the Palmetto Expressway. And Charles Dussault lived in that area. He fought the development of the land and went back and forth many years. And finally, the Supreme Court says, that's the Florida Supreme Court, you can build on it. Well, then recession came and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, a school wanted to open up over there. The neighbors fought it. And finally, houses are going up. And it's going to be perfect. It's going to fit right in. they want to have 4,500 students in the school right off of there. And everybody went completely crazy, expressed themselves and went down, hey, listen, our elected officials, we don't want that. I think Xavier Suarez, one of the commissioners there, he said, we don't want it. And I think that went that way. But now, at one point, a church owned the property. They made a lot of money on it. They're happy because they want to put a big church there. And also a big school was going to, school connected to the church and a standalone. So because the people spoke up, it made the political figures look at it. And in that case, everybody won. But meanwhile, it was 30 years. Yeah. All right, then nothing happened there. So if Calusa is another 10 years or 5 years, and the Coconut Grove Playhouse, that'd be great. So what are some other civic things that you've been involved with that standing up for the small guy?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other examples. We have the Garden of Our Lord is going on right now, which is a preservation of a garden. It's a biblical garden where plants from the Middle East were planted in the garden. And they're going to, it's a church right now. The church is sold, and a developer wants to put up a building there. And so we're fighting to preserve the garden. We feel it's a historic feature. The city of Coral Gables failed to protect it, and that's what we're appealing that decision. That's an example of that. And just various, I've got various, oh, go ahead.
There was a lady in Coconut Grove, somebody stole the title, forged your name on the title. You took on the case. Yeah. I know the name Gibson, but is that the family Gibson?
No, it's a different Gibson, but Shirley Gibson. It's fine. I just spoke to her today, and that case, the interesting, they're prosecuting the people. Basically, what they did was, and it's interesting, you see around Miami signs where people put up signs that say, this property is not for sale, because they don't want to get scammed. And someone drives by, they'll see an empty lot, and they'll know that it's not for sale because they drive by and see it. And the idea is, there's been in that case, we were able to stop it, fight it, undo it, get it back in our names. And then the police caught who did it. They did like a sting. They followed the checks. They got them.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So 2 of the people have accepted plea deals. The last one's still up, but they've been in jail this entire time. The guy's been in custody in the county jail, fighting that charge, and is going to eventually. They caught him red-handed, right? But and I got to tell you something. That continues. The scamming continues to be a problem.
In this case, he's forged your name. These folks sold it to a builder, developer. Fortunately for them, they bought title insurance.
Yeah.
And so the buyer got his money back. The insurance company lost.
The victim in that case was the insurance company, but I think that they got in the arrest, they got back some of the money. But yeah, that's exactly right. And it's interesting because I always tell people the problem with those cases is who has homes or property that's free of mortgages. Mostly elderly people, right? I have mortgages on my properties. Older people own it free and clear, and they're the ones that get scammed. And in her case, it got sold right from under her. They just forged, the name on there, fake notary, good faith third party buyer. In that case, we call those basically someone in that case acted as the seller.
And how did the seller, the owner, how did she become aware that the property had been stolen?
So she had a habit, or what she did was she went down and paid the property taxes every year in person, and went down, owns like 3 properties, went down to pay the taxes. And on one of them, they rejected the check saying the taxes have already been paid. So there must be some sort of mistake. And they say, no, that property is now owned by, and it was a New York development company. And so I happened to be at a local meeting that night, a neighborhood meeting in the West Grove, and she told me, I could tell something was wrong. She was so upset. And I thought there was a health problem. And she's like, no, I'm so upset, whatever. So we went. And so we actually went the next day, made a police report. And that had a very happy ending right from the beginning, because I called, deeds have prepared by. And in this case, it was a title company. I called them, 9 a.m. the next morning and said that, you never know how they're going to react. And in that case, they're like, whoa, great. We'll notify the title insurance company. And everything got stopped because I was in a rush. What you really don't want to do is get it down the line and have it sold a couple times.
Right.
And so she just happened to do it a couple months into the process. And then, a good faith title insurance company that acted for the good faith buyer, was immediately identified the problem, and there was nothing wrong. And it was interesting because I remember at the time law enforcement was involved, and the new owner, I wish I could remember the name, but this New York development company, they were calling me constantly saying, like, we want to transfer the property back. We want to transfer the property back. And here I am asking, they're pushing us to get the property back in our name. I wanted to make sure it wasn't a law enforcement issue to mess up what they were doing. Long story short, we were able to work it out, but they were great. The new buyer was great.
How long was it from the time she realized it had been stolen till the time she got it back in her name?
It was about 7 months.
Must have been a lot of grief.
And I don't know if you remember, there was a big press conference with the arrest and everything. And so, in those.
I remember seeing you on TV.
Yeah, it was funny. Well, I was not the star of that. The star of that, I got to be honest with you, the star of that was the state attorney. I mean, Catherine Rundle did a fantastic job. They really, and the police were amazing. And it was, I got to tell you something, there was a whole process that went with that. I remember being at the office, and the city of Miami police, I got to sing their praises. The city of Miami police sent out, and it's not a race issue, but Shirley Gibson's an elderly black lady, and they sent out these 2 black female police officers. And I remember the look of, I don't know, I wouldn't say relief, but just, Miss Gibson looking and being like, I feel like these people are going to care about this. They try to treat her like their grandma. Yep. And like I said, it's not all the police would do a great job, but I just remember those. I wish I remembered their names. I actually called and thanked them later, but these 2 young black African-American police officers, and they bird dogged it. They ended up arresting everybody. I think one of the people was up in Indiana. Like, they worked that case, and it really made a difference. I mean, police work matters. Prosecution support matters. Yep. I mean, they had a press conference with 20 people there. Like, they really pushed that. And I was really happy to see it because, in those cases, you got to send a message to the crooks that, like, we're going to get you. We're going to find you.
So I know this is the beginning of your every 2-week show that you're going to be doing here.
I love it.
Hear that, folks? Every 2 weeks, David Winker, attorney and civic activist, is going to be back here sharing his wisdom. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for what you do.
My pleasure. And Alex, thank you for producing the show. We're going to look right in the red camera and say, oh, I'm sorry. It's Andres Pena. All right, thanks very much. Pena. Okay. A year and a half, I still mix up. Folks.